Massive episode. We've got Adrian from the Deebreif to preview the game, so let's get straight into it.
Picked up by Archer again. He tries to crash through the pack. He does. He got through Maxwell, and he has a flying shot for goals. And that is a magnificent Glenn Archer goal. 2 in a minute to the man who has the shin bone.
So welcome back, guys. Another preview podcast, and every single week we're getting royalty on. Adrian from the Deebreif is here. He's given me some time. He's just given me a little hint. He's got a crazy nickname, so I'm excited to hear that. But thanks for jumping on, mate, and give us the scoop. What's the nickname?
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. It's Naughty, and I'm not a big fan of it, but it was coined by one of the other panelists on the Deebreif a few years ago. So my last name's Horton, and it turned into Nordo. And then from Nordo, it turned into Naughty. And I'm not a big fan, but this is the thing about nicknames. If you push back, as it is with Australian culture, people will just go harder and they'll make it stick. And it is stuck and it kills me, but it is what it is.
I mean, you got to steer into the skid with those, don't you? You're right. The more you push back on it, the more it's going to stick. And sounds like a pretty natural evolution of a nickname. I don't know how it got there, but I'm sure it's glorious in its own way.
Yeah, well, the person who gave it to me, he is a weird, crazy individual. He is as loose as it gets. We've enjoyed many podcasts with him, 10 beers deep, and he goes off on the weirdest tangents of all time. That podcast panelist, funnily enough, he hasn't been on the show this year. So we're looking to get him into the studio this week, but his house is crook. He's got a little one. I think there's a daycare bug floating around in their house. We're meant to have him on, and the beautiful thing about getting him on is Melbourne supporters need some humour, and they need a little bit of light because at the moment it's pretty dark, Josh, for DEES fans.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, DEES still are fighting for a top 8 berth, and we've won one game for the season. But North fans are on cloud 9 right now that we're actually competing in games, and we won one, but we're still rock bottom. You know, like we sort of discussed a little bit before we started recording, DEES fans and North fans definitely feel like we've trauma bonded, even though it is about a decade apart. But we're not so different after all. You know, you sort of understand us a little bit more maybe than the wider footy community. And it's nice because finally someone gets what we're going through.
Oh, absolutely. I know exactly where you're at. Experienced many dark years from 2007 through to 2013. It felt like it was never going to end at one point. A lot of Melbourne supporters will probably get pissed off with this because I reference it a million times, but I was there at Cardinia Park when we lost by 186 points to Geelong. I was there in the flesh, and it felt like half of my soul had been ripped out of my body as I exited the stadium. And I was with my housemate at the time, who's a massive DEES fan as well. And we didn't talk to each other for a good 2 hours, I reckon. And we lived in Windsor, and we're near that 24-hour bottle. And the only word we muttered to each other when we got back to Windsor Station was slab. And we walked in, we bought a slab, and we sat there at home, and we played FIFA till the wee hours of the morning. And it was cathartic and therapeutic. And I saw Andrew Demetrio the very next day. I was playing Sunday League soccer, and I was on the bench, funnily enough. We're doing rotations. I'm not trying to big myself up and say I was any good, but it was just opportunistic because he was walking his dog, and I said to Andrew, I said, what do you think about the debacle yesterday, Melbourne getting flogged by 180 plus points down at Geelong? And he didn't care. He was just like, mate, I'm trying to walk my dog. It's a Sunday. Like, leave me alone. And the reason I asked that is because I felt like Melbourne deserves some concessions, some draft concessions, and a little bit of help from the AFL, because at that point in time, it just looked like the abyss was perpetual. It looked like we were never going to come out of it. And I think the beautiful thing for North Melbourne fans is we have come out of it, and it was rocky, but we got Paul Roos in and Peter Jackson, and things started to turn. And then Simon Goodwin took over from Paul Roos, and then we went to the promised land with the 2021 flag, and we've seen some incredible players come through the doors at Melbourne in recent years. Stephen May, Jake Lever, obviously Max Gorn, Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, Jack Viney. Yes, and Ben Brown, who was pivotal to our 21 flag. He was amazing. So my message to North Melbourne supporters is just stick fat. Like, it will turn at some point, and it'll be all the more sweeter when it does.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of the message the pod tries to get across to the fans. And myself and my co-host Marnie, she's very in a beautiful way, may I add, when Marnie listens to this. So Marnie, please don't hurt me. She's deluded in a beautiful way where it's like she will tip North every week and genuinely mean it. It gets overly emotional, but it's because she cares. And I feel like I'm a little bit more like, I don't mind being bad now because I can see what's happening, but I also fully understand why. And you would have felt like this too, like the outside footy world that isn't in the D's sanctum doesn't get it. Like, as an example, all the Clarkson, is he good enough? Has he lost it? Well, the dude's coached about 23 games of footy for us. And then we're already talking, we were talking about that 2 months ago. Like, what are we doing? We're not in the position to be able to pick or be picky about coaches down at North Melbourne. I think we've got a pretty good one with a decent track record, and we just need to give him a little bit of time. And losing all the veterans, we lost about 1,300 games of experience after last off season as well, and replaced them with 18-year-olds and undrafted rookies. So, it seems like we are turning a little bit of a corner the last couple of weeks, but I couldn't agree with you more. You do just have to stick fat, because no team stays at the bottom forever, even though it does feel like it at times. And hopefully the last couple of weeks, the cogs have turned a little bit, because we look fairly competitive. And even though obviously the Collingwood loss hurt a lot, I'm stoked we played the way we did. And, if we bring that intensity the rest of the year, we're going to knock off some teams. It's a heartbreaker. I was there. I was surrounded by a bunch of emotional North fans. We've been through a lot, but, after I sort of had a sleep, woke up the next day, and I'm sort of like, yeah, I am super happy with the performance. I know we didn't get the win, but I just think, for a bunch of like 22 or 25-year-old and under players, showing that we can match it with the best is enough right now. And then hopefully multiple steps each year from now on.
I think that's the good thing about how long the season is. It is such a grind. It is such a marathon. I think the primary example, before we talk purely about North, is what's happened with Hawthorn.
Yeah.
Hawthorn have come with a rush. Mitchell has always been really bullish about his capabilities. He was a top player. He used to shit me when I used to watch those great Hawthorn teams, because there was a bit of niggle about him. There was a bit of swagger about him, but he was just better than most players out there, and he knew it. And I think he knows deep down he's a good coach.
Yeah.
Like he knows how to get the best out of that group. And a lot of people were coming for Hawthorn in the first month of this season. People saying, oh, I don't know if it's actually working with Sam Mitchell. And then the proof's in the pudding, the way that they're playing recently and what they're doing. So similar areas for North, hopefully. You've got 10 more games to round off the season. Can you lay down a platform for 2025 and continue to be competitive in all of these games moving forward? And the big opportunity is Saturday against us. Like, we're on the canvas a little bit. We're battered. We're bruised. Jake Lever won't be out there, unfortunately, because he is so vital to what we do behind the ball. Absolutely pivotal. So I think this is another chance for North to stake a claim, keep building respect. And we're feeling a little bit vulnerable as a supporter base because of what we've seen in the past month. We got our pants pulled down by the Eagles over there in the West. We thought,
it's not that hard to win over there, mate. Come on.
True. That was such a good win by your boys as well, because it looked like it was all lost, and then you regained it in those final moments. Almost the best way to win, to be honest. And I was loving it myself. And the thing about Melbourne is it just feels like we've lost our identity in recent times. Like, Max Gawn has spoken about it a bit. Christian Petrarca was very upfront about it a couple of weeks ago on 360. Even Simon Goodwin has alluded to it in his press conferences. Like, it's just not the same Melbourne. It's not the contest and defense team that we've seen over the past 3 years, incredibly consistent. It's a team that I believe, in my opinion, and I'm not a tactical expert, and I often say that on our show, but what I'm seeing is a confused team. We're trying to play the turnover game. We don't really know how to play it yet. And I think we'll have to ride out a bit of pain for the rest of this year. And then maybe, hopefully, over the course of a preseason, we can get it right. But you talk about fighting for finals and top 8 spots, it just doesn't feel like that down at Gosher's Park.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's sort of leading into my next question. Like, how, obviously you're not feeling super great about the D's right now. But what are you sort of expecting the rest of the year? And maybe, you know, what things do you think you can do to improve that? Because I think you're right. Like, I watch a lot of the D's and I really like the D's. I really like their team. And I think Petrarca personally is the best player in the competition. You know, when he's up and about, if everyone's at full tilt, I don't think there's a better player on a football field than Christian Petrarca. And, you know, like a lot of people, when you did win the premiership in 2021, I was expecting a mini dynasty perhaps, you know, because there were so many players that I looked at all over the field and you're just like, wow, they're stacked and they're all in their primes or about to go into them. So, you know, what has gone wrong and what do you sort of expect to turn for the rest of the season? What can you change to maybe improve it?
A lot of things have gone wrong. The game plan change, I think, has probably been too drastic. We weren't far off winning a premiership last year. We lost to Collingwood by 7 points in the qualifying final. It was 60-32 inside 50s in that game. We dominated all of the key areas. We kicked 7-11. We had a flying smother that knocked out one of our favourite sons, and him not being out there anymore has hurt us dearly. Angus Brayshaw was the glue down back for us, very courageous, a great leader of our football club. So it's been a huge loss. And then the Carlton semi-final as well, losing it by 2 points, kicking 9-17. And again, just being in full control in the last quarter and just letting it slip. I think kicking 2-6 in the final quarter. So those scars are real. We weren't far off with our brand and our territory game and what we've been known for over the past 3 years. But I think we've just completely overcorrected and gone way too far away from what we know, which is really disappointing. So that's probably one of the biggest reasons. Losing Gus, another big reason. Not getting what we need out of Harrison Petty. Statistically, he's the worst rated player in the competition, which is wild. He's been super frustrating all season. And then some of the other reasons, you have to look into it and say, okay, we're just playing a cobbled forward line in terms of the tools up there. Like Petty's not doing the business. Daniel Turner's an intercept defender, turned forward, probably doesn't have the body as well, unfortunately. And then the burden of responsibility on Jacob Van Rooyen is massive because a guy that was starting to really prove his worth at the back end of last year was Joel Smith. And of course, he went out under very dubious circumstances. So there's a few reasons for you and just a bit of a drop-off in the middle, like Clayton Oliver, Jack Viney, from a clearance perspective, just not the balls that we've seen in recent years as well. And that is definitely an area that is a massive concern. And if we're any chance of sneaking finals, I say sneaking because there aren't many of us that actually think we're going to get there at the moment. We need those two players in particular to get going. And the loss of Jake Lever in that West Coast game as well has just hurt our structure behind the ball, which, again, just shows you Melbourne are a little bit brittle when they don't have their best players out in the park. So there's a few reasons for you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't really know. I thought I was sort of expecting Jake Lever to be back for this game, but it's interesting that he's out. Give me your quick thoughts on the Petrarca thing as well. Like, it was pretty horrific, obviously, seeing the injury lists after what he sustained in that contest, and to come back on the ground. I think, you know, credit to him for wanting to go back on, and I would never question his dedication. Like I said, I rate Petrarca so highly, but I would assume it's done for the year, surely. And then it's pretty terrifying to know he was let back on the ground, or the MCG doesn't have the facilities to properly check that sort of stuff as well. That sort of shocked me.
Yeah, tricky one. It's almost like I don't want to go too much into the minutiae of it, but the fact that he came out pretty quickly after the game and said, hey, I put my hand up to go back out into the field. You can imagine such a warrior, such a competitor, as you speak about. He just wanted to get out there and play footy. He knows how vitally important he is to our team, and he's an absolute superstar. And I think it was just that, probably that adrenaline and that rush. It's King's birthday. You're coming up against Collingwood. It was a big game for us. Like, we needed to win that to get back into not only finals calculations, but just breathe new life into our season, give ourselves top four hopes. And that's the fine margins of AFL footy. I'm actually talking about being the other side of the ledger now with that loss, like thinking, oh, maybe this season will end with a whimper. So I think the fact that he wanted to go back on shows you the difficulties of what the medical staff had to face. But if I'm going to put my foot in it slightly, I think it was pretty obvious he was in a bad way, and would have loved one of our most prized assets ever at the football club in Christian Petrarca to be sitting on the bench, and for the medicos and everyone involved just having a stern word to him saying, "You're not right, pal. We're not going to put you back on there." So, I mean, it's easier to say that in hindsight. No one knows the conversations that people were having between player and medical staff at that point in time. And as I said, like, it's a cauldron of noise and atmosphere, and there's a lot going on. So it's hard to make those decisions when you're in the heat of the battle. But just don't like the way the media are now coming at Melbourne and creating a lot of fallacies out there. And I'm looking at you, Caroline Wilson, but that's no.
This is an open platform to have a crack at Caro, mate. You go for it if you need. I've done plenty of those over the years.
Good man. No, I won't give it the oxygen, but yeah, just disappointing if it gets blown out of proportion. And look, I won't be surprised if it does, because we've seen what News Corp and the Herald Sun and Mick Warner have tried to do to Melbourne over the past few years, trying to bring us down. So whatever. Water off a duck's back. Melbourne just got to get on with it and try and win games of footy again.
True. So how do you feel like, have you seen any of North in the last couple of games? Did you watch the Pies or the West Coast one? You said you watched a bit of the Eagles one, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. So I didn't watch all of it. I listened to some of it on the radio, the Eagles game. Pleasantly surprised, loving hearing Larkey binning goals and North playing with a lot of momentum and a lot of freedom in that third quarter. And then I got home to put the last quarter on and texting a couple of North mates and getting very excited for them. They're like, "Hey, fucking don't do that.
Hold on." Exactly the same.
Don't do that. Don't jump the gun." And anyway, it got really, really edgy and nervy, obviously, because West Coast came with the rush at the end. But I was really impressed with the fact that they actually got ahead and North Melbourne were able to calm, settle, win, somewhat of a controversial free kick in some people's opinions, but to go back and ice it or bin it from Jai Simkin was big, a leader of the footy club. I thought that was terrific. And then, to run away with it over there in the West, that is not an easy thing to do. Like, I've been to Optus Stadium. It was the prelim, funnily enough, when we didn't kick a goal to halftime. And they're mental. Like, they're absolutely berserk over there. So I thought that was really impressive. And I think it was just a pressure reliever. Like, all those young players in your team just needed to know that you could do it in hostile territory. And I think the mark of a really good football club is winning on the road. So that was a big tick. And then last week, oh God, I rode the emotions with you, to be honest. I wasn't going to watch any footy over the weekend. I was just going to spend time and I spent a lot of time with my little boy who's 2.5 running amok, and it was so nice not to watch footy. I can't tell you, just because of what Melbourne are going through at the moment. And then I got sucked in by listening to a bit on the radio, North of miles in front. I said to my wife, I'm going to put the last quarter on and just get so involved. And oh my God, what a mistake. What a mistake, because I was gutted at the end, and some of those non-free kicks were abysmal. There were many of them. It wasn't just the non-50. There was a throw at one point, I believe, from Steel side bottom.
Dacos threw one right in front of goal as well.
Nick Dacos threw one. Oh, it was horrific. Like, fair play to Collingwood. It was incredible that they actually were able to fight back 54 points down, 31 at three-quarter time. Like, that's just absurd. And it's their trademark, right? But yeah, I was feeling pretty deflated for a good 10, 15 minutes, almost as if I was a North supporter for that very short period of time. And losing to the filth in those circumstances is never great. If you're a North Melbourne supporter. But I'm really impressed with, like, I love Paul Curtis. I reckon he's a jet. I think he was a pick mid-30s or something.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Cool. I don't mind Eddie Ford. I reckon he shows a little bit. I reckon there's a player in there. Another high draft pick as well. Nick Larkey would be a godsend at the Melbourne Football Club. We talk about tall key forwards. He would be amazing. Harry Sheasel, absolute class. But the one player that I just love watching is George Wardlaw.
Oh, how good.
He's a freak. He's an
He's
absolute freak. He has the potential to be the prime mover in the competition. And a lot of people talk about Harley Reid, and fair enough. He looks generational and he probably will be generational, but I reckon George Wardlaw will put himself into the conversation at some point in the next few years and just be the absolute top brass of midfielders in the competition. People will be talking about him alongside Reid and Rankin, Sam Walsh and these types of players. Like, I just think he's unbelievable. I'm really looking forward to watching him on Saturday, to be honest.
Yeah, I've spoken at length about George Wardlaw. George Wardlaw and Charlie Comben are my two favourites. I can't speak high enough of George Wardlaw. That game was definitely a coming of age game. I think against the opponent as well. He sort of led the midfield with LDU, and his first half was so electric. He's 19 years old, and I think you're totally right. George Wardlaw to me has a little bit of grit and old school footy edge that maybe Harley Reid hasn't shown yet. Harley Reid's highlights are exceptional, like world class sort of stuff, and he's going to be an absolute gun of a footballer. But George Wardlaw's got like a country footy, I'm not afraid to bash and crash and do the dirty stuff a little bit more than I think Harley Reid may have. And I've said this since the day we drafted him. I think he's our most talented player, even over Harry Sheezel. And Harry Sheezel has done exceptional things. These two kids are 19, which is out of control. But Wardlaw is going to be Brownlow-esque sort of player one day. And don't even get me started talking about him because I love the guy. I'm really excited to see him back up the performance, hopefully this week as well, because the one thing I would maybe knock George for is his continuity and his consistency. Being able to do it back to back, I think has been a little bit of an issue for him, but I do think that was a little bit of a coming of age game. He had picked up a half volley off a contest and and if he kicked that goal, it would have been one of the greatest highlights I've ever seen on an AFL field, except he dribbled it out of bounds for a throw in, which was very, very sad. But yeah, look, our midfield does look very, very scary in the next few years. We need to be patient. Just like you've told us and you've reinforced the North fan base here. We do just need to be a little bit patient. So that being said, on the weekend, what's an area that you think North could possibly exploit the D's?
Mentality. I think Melbourne have been a little bit brittle and weak in the contest, which is not Melbourne. Under Simon Goodwin, we've been bulls, absolute bulls, in and under, fighting, scrapping, the number one contested possession team in the previous 3 seasons. I think we're ranked 12th or 13th this season. So remarkable drop off there. So from a clearance and stoppage and contested possession point of view and just hunting and outworking Melbourne, big opportunity for North because we sit here as Melbourne supporters and we just wait. We're like, where's Clayton Oliver? The Clayton Oliver that we've known and loved for so long and has put himself into the conversation as one of the greatest Melbourne players of all time. Well, we haven't seen him, unfortunately, and we didn't see him much last year because he got that injury halfway through the season. And then it's a similar story for Jack Viney. Jack Viney's second half of 2023 was ridiculous, like crazy. Picked up so many Brownlow votes and I thought was extremely unlucky not to be an All-Australian last year. Like he was on absolute fire. But again, it's the same story. We just haven't seen him fire to the level that we know he's capable. So you can definitely get us in those areas, in and under. So clearance has been an issue. I think the other thing that's really annoying us is just our inability to trap the ball inside 50. Get repeat entries, get it happening. It has happened a little bit. There was a St Kilda game a few weeks back, and even on King's birthday, we were able to get some territory happening. But it's been very easy to bounce out and score on turnover and in transition against us. So if Melbourne aren't able to apply the right amount of pressure inside 50, there's an opportunity as well, just from a D50 point of view to cut us up and cut us to ribbons in that respect. So that's one thing that I hope Melbourne are working on because it's just been far too easy to transition the ball against us in the last month and score against us. So I don't know who your runners are off half back, and I apologise. But if you've got some super fast, speedy dudes running off the back, you've got every opportunity of opening us up. So that's where I reckon the game might be won and lost.
It's interesting because it actually sounds very similar to our problems. You're just a better version of us, really, it sounds like, because our thing is like, you know, if we win from stoppage, we really dominate teams. Like that first half against the Pies, we barely lost a stoppage, it felt like. And if we can get quick transition into that forward line, our forward line's dangerous. But if you know, the D's can press back and clog it up, we're an awful contested marking team. I guess it's dependent on Colby McKercher as well if he comes back in. If he comes back in, he might be off halfback. Darcy Tucker and Zach Fisher have sort of been doing that for us recently, but we don't move it super quick off halfback. I think we tried to do that in the first chunk of the season, but it got turned over so quickly that we were giving up astronomical scores. We've gone to this. It's almost. It's kick mark sort of stuff, but we sort of try and move it quickly. It's like we sort of kick mark, maintain possession until we're about halfway up the ground, and then we sort of go for it. So I don't see us transitioning the ball super quickly from defense to forward because we haven't been doing that in the last month or so. But if we ever did, it'd be nice to know we might be able to get some run. We barely go through the corridor, it feels like. So, you know, it does sound like the things you're worried about is the same things I'm worried about. I mean, the reason we lost it against Collingwood was once the ball hit the ground, we couldn't stop their transition off the half back line or cutting us up through the corridor. But if we get first use, I think we can be really good. So, you know, I think like an area I feel like we might be able to get, I was going to say the same, is getting on top in the midfield. I think if we get on top in that midfield, especially with Lever out and Larky's going to be taking, obviously, Stephen May, I would assume. Bryn Teakle did a really good role for us on the weekend in his first ever game out of the mid-season draft. He took a couple of contested marks, kicked a goal, and looked really solid. A fan favourite of ours, Toby Pink, is playing in the forward line. I don't know exactly how I feel about Toby Pink, but he's becoming a bit of a meme, which is great. But he was competitive. Zerha probably had his best game for the year. So, yeah, I'm not really sure how we do win it. It sort of feels like we're in very similar positions as a team, but you guys just have better quality players and can do it at a slightly higher level.
Sure. I hope so. I hope we can sustain ourselves for 4 quarters because it's been a nightmare, an absolute nightmare month for us. It's been no good. So I don't know. We walk into the MCG on Saturday night. We're hopeful, but we're all a little bit, as I said off the top, we're a bit battered and bruised mentally. We honestly don't know what version we're going to get of Melbourne. We started off in a blaze of glory, 4-1, sitting pretty, top 4. We saw some differences in ball movement, so we've been crying out for going through the corridor, and you spoke about it just there. It feels like we're playing way too safe at the moment. We saw constantly against Collingwood just a little chip wide to retain possession and not pull the trigger through the corridor, unfortunately. And we want to see more of it because in a weird way, when Melbourne actually take it on and they play expansive, quick footy and we give our forwards a chance because there's a lack of quality tools down there and you create those 1v1s and 2v2s, you get every chance and we're not doing it enough. So it's a very confusing, complex setup at the moment for Melbourne. And I honestly have no idea what version of Melbourne will turn up on the weekend because we're not going into it with much confidence.
I mean, you're making me think we could do it, mate. You need to calm down. Now I'm starting to believe.
You could. I mean, you could. You look at the basis of the last 2 weeks. You may have actually turned a corner. It's really funny when you got a young raw team as well. Like it's a confidence game. You get one win under your belt, suddenly it clicks, and then they come out in the first half or 2.5 quarters, nearly 3 quarters against Collingwood, and almost put them to bed. Collingwood play what? 1 decent quarter of footy or 1.5 quarters of footy, whatever you want to call it, and it's enough to get the job done against you. But some of the free-flowing stuff that we saw in the first and second quarter from you guys last week was ridiculous. So if you can actually replicate that on the wide expanses of the G, you're a chance. Like you're a genuine chance. And you're a chance purely because we look a little bit lost at the moment. I don't think the players genuinely know what they're doing out there. And that might just be a transitional phase for us. Like we might have to just deal with a little bit of in-game tactical pain while we try to learn a new system this year in 2024, and then hope they recalibrate over the off-season. They know how to execute in 2025. Like it feels like this year might actually go down the drain a little bit at this point. It sounds, and I'm normally one of the most optimistic supporters going around, but that's just where we're at collectively as a supporter base.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see if we can, like, the reason I feel a little bit confident going into this weekend is because we did back up the West Coast performance against the Pies, and that's another level of opposition. There was obviously, they've got a few injuries and that sort of stuff, but they're still much better than us on paper. And, you know, being able to back that effort up 2 weeks in a row makes me think we can now go across. And it would be interesting to see if they take the loss as a negative or a positive. Like I can only really see positives apart from getting the 4 points. Other than that, we've shown that, like you said, when we do get that free flowing, you know, out of the stoppage football going, we look very, very exciting. The one part against the D's that I do worry about is Fritsch and Cozzy Pickett getting off the leash. We saw it with Schultz and Bobby Hill kicking 9 between them. Bobby Hill took a fantastic hanger right in front of me and, you know, obviously won them the game. Jackson Archer has definitely got done on Bobby Hill last week, but the week before on Liam Ryan did a fantastic job. He'll probably, I guess it depends who you play Cozzy through the midfield, but he'll definitely take one of them. I don't know how much I feel like Luke McDonald could go with any of those guys. I think Archer on Cozzy and then an Elmac on a Fritsch is probably the way I'd go. But, you know, if those guys get off the chain, and they definitely could against North, then I'm going to be very, very worried. But hopefully we learn from last week. But do you think that could be a possibility for you guys? Like the talls, you know, Van Ruin, Young can be a great player, but maybe lacks a little bit of consistency. But your smalls do scare me a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I think Cozzy kicking 2-4 against Collingwood, Bailey Fritsch kicking 1-4 against Collingwood, they'd be keen to respond and atone for those performances. Like if they straighten up on King's birthday, it's maybe a different scoreline in the end. I mean, we kicked 6-15. That is just absurd, Melbourne. What are you doing? So Cozzy and Fritter are definitely two that I would circle and say, from a Melbourne perspective, you need to get your shit together and you need to hit the scoreboard and do what you're in the team for, and that's to kick goals. So I think there's definitely going to be heat on players like them. Cade Chandler's another one who's been down a little bit in recent weeks, and he has the potential to get off the chain. He's got all the tricks, all the tools in his bag, but hasn't put it together over the last month. So I think you're right. From a small brigade point of view and those matchups that you speak about, and, you know, no disrespect to Luke McDonald or Jackson Archer, they're in different, you know, time zones in terms of their careers. But I think we could definitely get on top in that area. And I'd hope that we would, because I spoke about it earlier. Forward pressure and creating turnover in our front half, I want to see more of it. And those are the three players that you want to see a little bit more from in terms of defensive acts and actually bringing that. So, yeah, I think you could be onto something.
I'm a genius. We've got a couple of minutes left on the chat. Let's go for a prediction and a points margin here. What do you reckon?
Early prediction, because we've got our show on Thursday. I'm normally way off with these, particularly this year, because like your co-host, I always like to tip the D's, of course.
Absolutely.
And I've done that in my footy tipping comp, and normally it would work for me because Melbourne would win most weeks, but it hasn't been the case this year, and I'm a few off the pace. So I'm going to go for Melbourne by 22 points. Ooh. I think it'd be neck and neck though. I think maybe even at 3/4 time it'll be almost close to level, and then I think a little bit of superior fitness and experience might overrun the young, raw North Melbourne team. And do you want a bog as well?
Yeah, throw it to me.
All right, we'll throw in a bog. We'll go with Cozzy just because you raised it. So now you've got me optimistic all of a sudden. I'm starting to feel it.
This is it. See, we're not too far apart, us North and D's fans.
Cozzy to kick ball. There you go.
Oh, that hurts. I've been thinking all week North by 3 goals. I just feel like Oh God, it feels bad when I tip us after the last few years. I'm going to go North by 3 goals. I think the Pies and the West Coast win and the Pies performance gives us a lot of confidence. We don't usually play great on the G, but I think with the kick mark thing we got going on, maybe the wider ground might be able to help us out with that to get a bit more space. So I'll go D's by 3 goals. Best on for me. Give me George Wardlaw. Give me George Wardlaw. I love the guy.
God, if you actually beat us, just watch the Melbourne Football Club and their support implode. Again, no disrespect, but it will be on. The pitchforks will be out in force.
Carroll will be out in full force, mate.
Mate, it'll be crazy if you do that to us. But fair play to you if you get us, because as I said, we're a little bit brittle. We're a bit fragile at the moment.
Well, I'm terrified, mate, but hey, that's very exciting. Thank you for your time. Thank you for jumping on. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you and hear all your great work?
Our North Melbourne supporters don't want to listen to us, but if you
come on, mate, we're the same.
You want to hear us have a whinge and complain and moan about our football club, it's on all your favorite podcast apps, Spotify, Apple, and the like. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We're everywhere and anywhere. And there'll be a lot more whinging as the season goes on because we're not an optimistic bunch, Josh.
I understand completely, mate. Trust me, we're right there with you. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate your time, man.
It's been awesome, mate. And as I said, stick fat, the wheel will turn and you'll get your time in the sun.
Go North. Come on. Thank you so much to Adrian for that interview. Love getting the other podcasts on. Love getting involved with the podcasting community. And he's got great insight, great guy. And hopefully he's right and they are all nervous to play us on the weekend. But hey, who knows? Check out the Debrief if you've got any DEES fans in your life and you want to send them the Debrief's way. Best DEES podcast out there. All right. News. The only news floating around this week is LDU's under a bit of an injury cloud. He had an MRI through the week for like a little niggling injury. And Sheasel did an interview on the radio and was sort of like, I didn't really know he was injured. Do you trust that fully? Don't know. You'd think you'd know if your mate went for an MRI, but I have no idea. Everyone says he's trained and looked okay. He was meant to train today. I don't know the result of that because I have not checked the lineup yet. Live team reaction coming up. But yeah, hopefully he plays because I think that could be a difference in the game for sure. If we go in with no LDU, I'm nowhere near as confident against the D's this weekend. So other than that, that's about all the news really that I've come across my desk this week. Other than that, things at North seem to be okay. There's a bunch of it. George Wardlaw did an interview. Jerry did an interview on the website today. Shees did one. Did Larky do one? I can't remember. Anyway, lots of North Melbourne representation on the radio. Talking about all the talking points about the 50-metre penalty and, are you guys disappointed or happy with the result? There's so much to go through. So anyway, we're going to get into some barbershop chat after we do the live team reaction. Now, what would I change personally this week? Now, I've got the team up from last week. I actually haven't had much time to go through the teams and pick who I would want in and out. Just looking at it, personally for me, I would probably hesitate to be going in super tall. I would probably take Toby Pink out. And other than that, the thing that's on my mind is, if Will Phillips is going to tag, can Will Phillips and Liam Shields play in this team? I said after the Eagles game, I'll never want Liam Shields dropped again. Now Will Phillips has come in and looked great tagging. I kind of think you don't want two players who taggers in the team. I'm thinking who I want to come in. Now, McKercher, I think, is back. I'd like Simpkin to come in. They're sort of the main two. Other than that, I don't really mind. I don't think there's that many changes to make. I'd love to see a Hardiman or a Bergman in this team. But hey, we're not going to always get our wish. So the two changes I would make this week is Shields and Pink go out. McKercher and Simpkin come in. That is what I would like to see. The only reason I want to drop Shields is because Phillips tagged incredibly well. Callan Dawson's not playing. He got suspended for a week. So what other change would I make? Give Hardiman another shot, I reckon. There's a part of me that wants Miller to play, but let's give Hardiman a shot, I reckon. Or bring Dersma back in. I want Dersma back in. Okay. Dawson for Dersma. Say that 10 times fast. Pink for Simpkin. And Shields for McKercher. That's what I would change. Taking a defender out, and McKercher's not technically a defender, but he'll play off half back. The D's don't have an overly tall forward line anyway, depending who they've got playing. Van Ruin is there. I don't know if Ben Brown's injured or not, to be honest. So I really worry about the smalls. I guess McDonald and Archer are going to be in for it this week. So we will see. But they're the changes I would make, okay? I would bring in Dersma just because he's been good form and I'd like to see him play. McKercher and Simpkin for Pink, Shields and Callum Dawson. All right, let's go to this week's team and let's react live. Now, the live team reactions sometimes need a little bit of a spice up. So Clarko's making good decisions and it's giving me worse content. And I don't like that, Alistair Clarkson. All right, let's see. Okay. Very interesting. So we have Dylan Stevens in and Jai Simpkin. No McKercher. I'm worried about this McKercher injury. It's almost like a Callum Dawson 2-week but 2-month injury. He's only meant to be out for a week, wasn't he? I'm glad they're being cautious, but I'd like to have a little bit of an update on him. Anyway, Dylan Stevens in. I like that. I know a lot of the fans are going to be unhappy about that. But I think in this team, with how we're playing, that really serves his role incredibly well. Simpkin, fantastic, love that. Stevenson out, omitted, fair. Don't think he did anything wrong against the Pies, but hey, is what it is. Callum Dawson, suspension, hopefully comes back in the week after. Paul Curtis, 50th game. Adam Tomlinson, Colton, Tholstrup, and Kynan Brown. I think Kynan Brown is the debutant for them. I know Tomlinson. Depends if he plays back or forward. Named in the back line, but I guess you never know. And Colton, he was their draft pick, wasn't he? Wasn't he the small forward? Weren't we looking at him? I'm pretty sure Joel, our draft guru, brought that up. Anyway, Christian Petrarca out, Jack Billings omitted, and Bailey Laurie omitted. Kynan Brown is the debutant. I didn't even look down there. There's my football knowledge, guys. Interesting to see how we line up. Now, the other thing for me, and I know it worked against the Pies, but maybe I would like the sub to be used a little bit better. Toby Pink, I think, shouldn't be playing a full game. Toby Pink's been named in the back line. He was named in the forward line last week. You really don't know. Once again, I wish they sort of showed you rough positions. But I don't think anyone else really deserves to be dropped. Great to see LDU is in the squad. I guess he was always going to be. Still potential of a late out, but I'm glad that he's in that team because it makes me a lot more confident that we can do it. But yeah, other than that, look, it should have been a winning formula. That's probably the best we've played all year, except for that run we gave up. But hey, if they can replicate anything like that, I would be very, very, very happy. Looking at the D's team, Stephen May and Adam Tomlinson sort of back there doing their thing. Salem off the back line is a good player. They've still got Neil Bullen. Caleb Windsor's had a great season. Clayton Oliver. He's the domino in this game. You know what I mean? There's two. I'll put 3 in there, and one of them's not Max Gawn. There's a few, but basically, Cozzy and Bailey Fritsch, I'm worried about getting off the leash. Right. I'm worried about them getting off the leash. Callum Dawson would be a perfect one to play on a Bailey Fritsch. I kind of think Aiden Core will probably play on Van Ruin. Charlie will be the interceptor. I don't really want Pink. What do you do with Pink then? This is the problem. I think we're going in too tall. I'd probably put Jackson Archer on Cozzy, I think. Only going off last week. Cozzy and I'm playing Bobby Hill. Bobby Hill, a similar type of player, explosive, quick, small, sneaky around goal. If they trusted Jacko with that task last week, they'll probably put him on a similar type of player this week. I would assume maybe I would either put Core or McDonald on Bailey Fritsch. Then Van Ruin's off the chain. I'd probably say McDonald goes to Fritsch and Core goes to Van Ruin with Chom cutting across and intercepting. No Jake Lever for the D's, which is very, very good for us. Obviously no Petrarca, who I think is the best player in the comp when he's up and about. Other than that, there's a lot of young names on this D's team. A very, very different team from their premiership days. Viney is probably someone Viney and Oliver can get off the chain. I'd say Clayton Oliver probably gets tagged. And then if Viney picks up, maybe you swap the tag. But I'd say let's tag Oliver. They're the players in Cozzy and Bailey Fritsch that I would probably watch in the forward line if I was the coach, but I am not. Other than that, I guess there's not too much to talk about. Once again, kind of sensible changes. A bit shocked about McKercher. I really thought McKercher would be back this week. I have to look at those Irish blokes' videos and see if he's given any updates on McKercher. But yeah, it's a little bit concerning that he's meant to be out for a week and he's been out for 6 weeks. But hey, our injury team has got a little bit of habit of doing that. Okay, that's basically the team. Not really much more to talk about there, I don't think. I wish there was like a shock inclusion so I could hype up a little bit more. But hey, I'm just here to deliver you guys the news and my opinion. I do like the Dylan Stephens thing. This is what I'll say quickly with Dylan Stephens is I am a Dylan Stephens backer, almost like I was a CCJ backer. Look how that turned out. The only reason I'm saying this, and you guys tell me in the comments if I'm right or wrong on this. I feel like with our, and I've said this before, but if you haven't heard it, I feel like with our kick mark sort of game, especially coming out of defense right now, that Dylan Stephens could be a great link up because I think he was a really good user of the football. My only issue with Dylan Stephens was he wasn't getting around the ball at all. When he got the ball, I think he used it okay, but he just never got around it. So what we were doing though is the only way we exited our back 50 is to bomb the thing as far as humanly possible. And what's Dylan Stephens going to do? Take a hanger on the wing? No. We all as fans hate the kick it long to Jaden Stevenson on half forward and see what happens sort of thing, right? So, Dylan Stephens can link up with the guys running off half back a lot better, and I think he can be a good transition when we're playing a little bit more open, which we have been the last couple of weeks. So I'm really excited to see Dylan Stephens back. Talented, young, and I think as a fan base and every football fan, we write players off way too quick. I did that with many players. The Jerry thing, I understand. I don't think I was wrong with anything last year, and he's been on the list for 6 years. I never really saw a thing, but hey, we all know that he's turned into an All-Australian ruckman. Who knew I'd be saying that ever? I just think Dylan Stephens has a lot of talent, and I think he can fit how we play a lot better now than he did at the start of the year when we didn't look very good. We all thought we kind of looked good with North Ball. North Ball's dead. North Ball has died, and I'm kind of glad it did. Anyway, glad Wardlaw's there. Glad LDU's there. Bryn Teakle's still there. Fantastic. And yeah, I guess when you play that well, you don't have many changes. Okay. Let's go to the Jazz, and then we'll tip. So cue the Jazz. So this week at the barbershop, the main conversation coming into the store has been, oh, you must be spewing, mate. You lost that game. But then there's other people coming in and saying, I can't believe how well you guys played. Now, there's two ways to look at this, and this is what I've been saying to the people. Some people have come in trying to banter me, trying to say, mate, North's rubbish. You can't even win a game you're 50 points up in. And I guess on the surface that is true. But when you look at the balance of the sides where North Melbourne is at, Collingwood winning a premiership and, they're the last quarter specialists, aren't they? You've got to be pretty happy with it. And I feel like I've turned a couple of people from thinking North sucked to North have actually improved a lot. The banter won't work on me, guys, and don't let the banter work on you guys as well. We know what we've done 2 weeks in a row. This is a massive test against the D's. The D's are gettable. Charlie Comber will be the first to say it. The D's are gettable, and if we play like we've played the last 2 weeks against the D's, I genuinely think we win. It's interesting with the banter coming into the barbershop because people are trying to rev me up, and as much as North have hurt me so many times, I think it's given me a thicker skin. And now, when they rev me up, I go, yeah, we're not great. But look at what we've done the last couple of weeks, and we've got to focus on that. Marnie Cohen said it first. You've got to find the small wins when you're a team at the bottom of the ladder, and that's what's got to make you enjoy it. If you're unhappy because we lost and you've got no other thoughts on the game, I'd say you need to switch your mindset up a little bit. Yes, you can look at it as in we lost a 50-point lead, or we got 50 points up on the reigning premiers. And I'm definitely in the camp of earlier. Once our entire team isn't under 22 years old, we'll be able to run out a full game. Because you guys saw what LDU and Wardlaw did, especially George Wardlaw in that first half. If he replicated half of that in that second and wasn't gassed, we win that game. So let's go North. Stop the Jazz. All right. Time to tip, and then we're getting out of here. Carlton Geelong, a massive, massive, massive game. At the G, I'm going to tip Carlton, but I genuinely think it could go either way. I'm almost ready to say whichever team loses this game, I'm writing off being a premiership contender. I feel like I've sort of written Geelong off, maybe not Carlton, but if Geelong lose, I think I'm putting a nail in them for a premiership. If Carlton lose, I think the same because they're meant to be a top 2 team in this league. Their list is a top 2 list, but they just don't look super convincing. I know they're second on the ladder, but they lose one game and they drop, nearly out of the 8, to be fair. So that's how tight it is this season. So I'm going to tip Carlton, but not with any sort of confidence. Port and Brisbane. Ooh, head versus heart here. I am going to go Brisbane. I'm going Brisbane. I've just seen a headline here. Power Axe 4. Wowee. I'm going to go Brisbane. I don't know why. There's not much logic behind this. I mean, the Hawks have more points than them this year, which is terrifying. I've got a gut feeling, and that's about it. They played really, really well last week, and Port are kings of the choke. So, give me Brisbane. GWS and Sydney. Give me Sydney. I mean, that's a pretty easy pick. Hey, okay. So I thought it said Etihad Stadium, but it's Marvel Stadium now. It's NG Stadium, whatever it is. Sydney. You'd be mad not to tip Sydney every game the rest of the year. North and Melbourne, we already sort of talked about it. I think North by 3 goals. That's going to be my tip. Very, very rare that I go in confident at a North game. If we replicate it, that will be the winning margin. If we don't, we can easily lose this game. That's my mindset. Essendon West Coast, Essendon easily. Freo Gold Coast, gross. What an awful game. No wonder it's 4 p.m. on a Sunday, our specialty. Freo. Oh, Freo. Big Sun's out. It's okay. So I think King's out. Give me Freo over there. The Suns are just a bit boring, aren't they? And not very fun. So, yep. So Freo, Essendon, North, Sydney, Brisbane, Carlton. They are my tips. You can lock those tips in 100%. All right, guys, thank you very much again. Thank you to all the listeners who have come down to the barbershop throughout the week as well. If you want to book a haircut with me, Mitcham, in Mitcham, across from the station, Black and Brown Barbershop. You can book online, request Josh, put further north in the comments so I know you're a listener, so I give you extra special service. If you come on a Friday or a Saturday, bring gifts for Big Ant. Shout out to Josh, who came in last Saturday, which I've already talked about, but shout out to him, brought him an in sympathy card after the West Coast loss. It was incredibly funny. Anything like that to banter Big Ant will be hilarious, and we can talk about it on the pod. The Helmet Jerry thing. Now, some people have already said to me that where they've bought their helmets, which I bloody love, guys. I'd say maybe the Richmond game would be the one I'm thinking of right now. Bay 29, I haven't got it confirmed with the admins, but I'm assuming Bay 29 will be happening for the Richmond game. So as long as Bay 29 is happening for Richmond, let's softly lock in how that's the game we're going to dress up as Helmet Jerry. So if you guys don't know, and I'll make a separate video and maybe even a little snippet podcast about this, I've got a Temu link. If you want the link, message me and I'll send it to you. After I make the video explaining what we're doing, I'll post it out to everyone. Buy the helmet. It's only $10. Buy yourself a Helmet Jerry helmet. We're going to all get into Bay 29. And even if you can't get into the Bay, come down to the Bay and we'll see if we can get a Helmet Jerry to come over and take a photo with us. We'll start pumping it up for a few weeks, saying we're all dressing up. Tristan, please come and take a photo with us after the game at Bay 29. We would love that. So that's the plan. I'd say loosely against Richmond. Let me figure a couple of things out. We got plenty of time. So we will sort it by then. But if you want the Temu link now to buy the $10 helmet, message on Instagram if you can. Facebook, I'm slow to get back at, but Instagram is a place to message and I'll send you the link. Okay, follow the socials. Marnie will kill me, but you know where they all are. She can tell you next podcast. Love you, Marnie. And we'll be back after our massive win against the D's. The MCG is a bit terrifying. Rug up, guys. I'm going out for a pub feed before I'm going to be there. So we'll see how we go. I'm bringing a couple of people who aren't full North fans yet, and I'm going to try and convert them. So I'll let you know how that goes. Anyway, thank you for listening so much. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we will be back either Monday or Tuesday morning. I would assume maybe Monday, but who cares? I'm going. See you guys. Love you. Bye.